to talk about anxiety and how I've kind of like come to realize, I guess, my anxiety and how I cope with it and manage it and things like that. It's just, again, a conversation to have so I can learn more about my own anxiety and kind of recap, I guess, that little journey, and also maybe some people will have some ways that they can contribute and like how they manage their anxiety and what makes them anxious, and like, or maybe they'll get some ideas. I don't know. It's been interesting. I guess first of all, I'll say that like I didn't even have that label for myself or realize like, oh wait, I've got anxiety, until I moved to Lethbridge, and it was a little while after that kind of got like reaffirmed. So I've been here for a little over 2 years, and I don't remember at what point that it happened first, but the partner that I was living with at the time, just because like, I mean, we would have been living together for like a year already at that point in Saskatoon, and then we moved here, and so like they obviously got to know me at home and like know me more and whatever, and I think that was a word that they had used at some point, and I just didn't really like know what to do with it. Like it was like, what is, I don't even know what that means. Like to me it was just like, oh, it's just a synonym for stress or something, and like I just didn't really know what to do with that word. So I didn't really do it. I don't remember at the time, anyway, my memory doesn't serve me very well sometimes, but I don't remember doing anything with that word at the time. I was like, okay, well, sure, what, maybe, I don't know, maybe I've got anxiety, I don't know what that means, I don't know what to do with it, whatever. But then, for the first time in like ever, like I decided to go seek some counseling. Not the first time ever, to clarify, but like the first time that I, like maybe as an adult, where I wasn't obligated to, I decided I'm going to go and just give this a shot. I was teaching at that point, I had some benefits, and it wasn't going to cost me anything really, like not that much. So I was like, hey, maybe I can see about this anxiety thing, and like I think that makes it, like at some point it kind of clicked a little more, I think, and it made a little more sense. But I wanted to like talk about just like, hey, I'm kind of like in a couple different areas being not who I want to be, basically, and want maybe some help with figuring that out, which maybe like counseling will be a whole other conversation that I talk about. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. It doesn't seem like there'd be a lot of meat there. But okay, generally, I guess, like talking about it to a counselor has never been something like, oh, I just need to get it out. Like as much as I say like having a conversation helps me figure things out, it's like a conversation with usually someone that I trust, or like that I'm just like getting it out there like that. I don't know, writing, that stuff never seemed to work, and this wasn't something I was doing before. But like talking to a counselor just by talking didn't really do anything. If I wanted to see a counselor, was because I wanted some solutions that I didn't have. Like I didn't go to school for this, like maybe you can help me out. That was kind of the thinking behind that. So I decided to see somebody, and then because like I just wasn't who I wanted to be for a lot of reasons, and I'm doing a lot of things, but the anxiety was a major thing that was like, hey, there's a lot of things that stem from your anxiety, and yes, you have anxiety, as well as maybe some like OCD tendencies, which I've kind of like thought of before, but nothing, like I've never been diagnosed with anything specifically ever, or been given any medical prescriptions or nothing like that. Because I mean, like OCD tendencies that are linked to my anxiety, and then I have like some attention like deficits as well, but they're not extreme enough probably, or maybe just because it wasn't. If that was something that was more on the rise when I was in high school, maybe I would have got tested for that or something. But maybe I wasn't showing symptoms of that. They're not enough. Anyway, there's a bunch of these little things. Anyway, but they were like, yes, like anxiety is a huge part of you and whatever else. So we started talking, and then through those conversations, like I really am grateful for them, and I didn't see the counselor for very long, maybe 6 months, I think, and that was kind of it. But there were some valuable conversations that came out of that with anxiety, and one was like, oh, you know, like you've most likely had anxiety for a long time, like it's probably been something throughout school, like high school and whatever else that you've had, and you're just managing it differently, and now a lot of those coping mechanisms you haven't had anymore, you haven't been using, and thus, for many reasons also, like in the past couple of years, maybe my anxiety has also been rising, partially because I wasn't using these coping mechanisms, and maybe partially just because like the new factors and stressors and stuff as like my situation that I didn't have to deal with before. So I guess that's the thing too with coping with anxiety. There's like two things, I guess, on two different levels, and one is like, what are some things that you can do, or that I do, or that I've been talking with people about like things that you do in your regular day or week that might help you to just like manage like all the time, and things that you can do in the moment where you're feeling anxious. So there's those two different things going on. But yeah, as for my anxiety as a whole, like I think it probably was something that I had as a youth, and especially in high school. But I wasn't really, I didn't recognize it. It wasn't on my radar then, even more so than it was like before a couple of years ago. I just wasn't thinking about it really. And maybe I didn't feel the effects of it as much because I was doing so much. So things that I was doing that were probably helping me manage anxiety at the time that I didn't realize, like one, from grade 7 to 12, because that was like high school for me, I was playing basketball. I was on the basketball team. And so during the season anyway, I was pretty active doing that. And I was just way more active then than I had been like after high school. My activity just declined a lot. But anyway, so like playing basketball, so during season, like I was at the gym, like playing as much as I could, like open gym days, like whatever, not just practice and games. I was just there as much as I wanted to, like, or as much as I could be, because I wanted to be there all the time. So that was one thing, is being physically active, releasing certain chemicals and stuff definitely helps me, I've noticed for sure. And it's not getting outside necessarily and getting sun and vitamin D or whatever else, because that's something that I think probably does help me. Some of the stuff could also be placebo too, right? But I mean, it's an effective placebo, so then it's doing its job and it's fine. But yeah, physical activity definitely helps me for sure. I've noticed that when I've been thinking about it in the past couple of years, being like, hey, if I work out, like, well, we'll get there. But so playing basketball was something I was doing regularly, and when I wasn't doing that, I mean, like, I didn't have a car in Outlook. The town I was in was very small anyway, but I walked a lot. Like, I just walked everywhere in town that I needed to go to, really. So I didn't even ride a bike there. Like, I didn't have a bike when I was in Outlook. So yeah, I just kind of walked a lot. So even when I wasn't in season, I was walking. On those walks, like, because during high school, like, that was kind of when I discovered metal, and like, or that was introduced to me and stuff, and I was like super just like this big metalhead, and I don't know why, but it just came like to me of just like just going out and walking and not being around people and singing and screaming. That's another thing that helped me manage my anxiety too. So like, or just helped me manage my stress and everything else that was going on, was being out alone, walking, so getting that physical exercise, but also I was like doing vocals, singing and screaming and stuff, and that was something that helped as well. And that's partially because like combining like obviously like lyrics and the things that I was singing and screaming about and feeling the music, and then also being physically active and doing something. Also, like, I just like had more like mindfulness. Like, I had more time too, right? Like, being in high school, I generally wasn't working because there weren't many jobs in Outlook. Like, I shoveled snow for the bank in winter, and that was kind of it. I was doing papers for a little bit, but not for long. But yeah, so I had more time, and I wasn't super heavily invested in school. But with that time, like, so many times I would just like lie on my bed, and listen to music, just listen to albums, just, that was it. I didn't do nothing else. Like, I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't have a computer, we didn't have internet at home anyway. So, I mean, I also read way more in high school than I read now, even though I've been returning to that. So just like mindfulness activities too, that just like helped like me center myself, and I didn't have as many stressors, but the stressors I did have, I was able to escape them more often at home and outside of the home through physical activity and walking and whatever else outside the home, but also inside the home. I was able to escape into a book. I was able to just listen to music and just chill and just let it really, really absorb me, which is something like, I had a video of the power of music, which I'll probably link at the very end of the video, where I talked about the power of music a bit. And I didn't get into like super fine detail, but that's something that I think that probably really, really, really helped me when I think about like mindfulness and what that is and what that can do for a person or me. That was super helpful, and it is now, if I can get into a rhythm of doing it. But anyway, those are some things like in high school that I was probably doing to help me manage. And then after high school, I moved to a bigger city, which is Saskatoon, like right away, like within a week after grad. I moved there, and I'd been there a bunch of times before, like I knew the city, because we were only an hour away. I had been there like almost every week, or sometimes twice a week, all throughout that time, grade 7 to 12, or I guess grade 6 to 12, because I moved to Outlook in grade 6, so I had 1 year of elementary, and then I was in the high school. But, so after I moved to Saskatoon, again, I didn't have a car for a while, I was walking a lot, and it didn't bother me, like I was just walking away for longer distances, and again, like, just on my walks, like singing, I would go out and scream and stuff too. I guess there's another part of this that I don't know how much it relates to anxiety, but I guess I'll backtrack for 1 second because I just talked about screaming again and getting out and walking and stuff. As a side note, like I said, I've never been diagnosed with anything other than, and I wouldn't call this a diagnosis, right? You were diagnosed with anxiety, but just like a label that was given to me. But I was never diagnosed with depression. I don't really think I had clinical depression. Like I really don't think that was a thing for me, judging by like the people that I know that have had that, and some have been medicated and some have not been. In high school, as a teenager, I was definitely down consistently for extended periods of time, like years at a time, where it was very consistent. So it felt like I was in a depressed state for a long time, but it wasn't as extreme as others, I would say. But at some point, this, like, I don't know when that shift kind of happened, and I realized like being angry is better than being depressed for me. Which maybe that's something I'll talk about more in depth some other time, and my anger in general and where that's led me. That's definitely a part of this whole story, which is just me, but it's definitely something anyway that I realized at some point, like, hey, like, especially going out and screaming and doing that stuff was with aggressive music and being angry or just doing something. So if I wasn't playing basketball, which is like a very physical activity, it's not a passive one. It's very active in your doing something, even though it's not like physically like whatever. If I'm just out and screaming and like walking, that is not a passive activity. Whereas like just sitting there and listening to music is a passive activity. It's still a mindfulness activity, but it's a very different one. And I found if I was channeling anger, I needed to physically do something. I couldn't just stay there. Because like I would write too. I guess that's another thing I was doing. How could I forget that? I was still expressing myself creatively in high school to manage my anxiety. And again, something I'll talk about later more in depth is my journey of like how I got into art and stuff, because in high school I was not into visual art really at all. And I'll talk about that some other time. But I was writing a lot, and that also was a thing that helped me. So I was still creative and I was still expressive on paper, but I was angry. Writing it down wasn't going to cut it. So anyway, yeah. So then jumping to when I moved to Saskatoon, I think I was still managing fairly well again, because like I didn't have all the stressors I have now, or the way that I view them or handle them is different. And I was doing a lot of walking still, like almost daily. Again, didn't have a vehicle for a couple of years. First couple of years I lived there, and I think I still had a little more time, but I was going out more, and I had like better friendships and stronger friendships, and I was way more in like a prolonged state of like I was just happier more consistently, because like yes, I had friends in Outlook, but it just wasn't, none of them were close friends. Like I didn't really bare my soul to any of my friends there, and so even though I've always been fairly open, but it wasn't like, I don't know, there wasn't an exchange really that I was getting back. But in Saskatoon, I had a couple of really close friends, and I would spend a lot of time with them the first couple of years I moved there. I was just working the first year, and then later I was upgrading and working before university, so it wasn't like super heavy and stressful and whatever. And then like after like 5 or 7 months, I like moved out on my own. So yeah, there was a lot of freedoms and stuff there, and I was just having a really great time and exploring being an adult. And yeah, so I didn't really feel a lot of anxiety there, though I'm sure that I had it, and it manifested and came out in certain ways. I'm just not sure of all those ways that it came out. But that was really helpful. But as the years kind of went on, like there's this gap from like then until now that was just filled with university for the most part, like 2 degrees back to back. I did my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree and then my education degree, both at the U of S, just back to back. So I was in school for 9 years. If I was 2006 to 2015. Yeah, so 9 years of school. And I fumbled a little bit there at the beginning, for sure. So then I think like slowly part of my character definitely started eroding, and I was putting myself in situations that were negative situations for my mental health and my emotional health. And because I was doing that, I also probably became at odds with myself and was more stressed out and anxious about things, and like putting myself in scenarios where I would have to hide things or be secretive or whatever else, or just like, I don't know. And I was still having like, I had still good friendships and stuff, which was very helpful. But I was at that point really starting to deteriorate my character and not being the person that I want to be. So that was not helping. Being in school and having those stressors wasn't helping. I was also still very like, for the first couple of years of university, pretty codependent with my partners as well, which again, something else I might talk about later in another video. But that was also something that like wasn't helping me, is me being that codependent on partners and just like feeling like, oh, like every fight we have is like relationship ending, and I just didn't like, I don't know, it just wasn't good because it was just so, the relationships weren't necessarily volatile, but I treated them that way with how I reacted to natural things that might happen, like arguments or fights or whatever, and needing things to be resolved so quickly. That's part of something, I guess, too, that I guess I haven't even talked about, like, what does anxiety mean to me? What does that even mean? Why didn't I say this in the beginning? Yeah, I guess I need a segue here rather than cutting it. But like, what does anxiety even mean? For me, it manifests in a lot of ways, I guess, and that's again something I've just come to know in the past little while. But no, I'll wait until I get to more present. Yeah, that was done. Whatever. I should have done it at the beginning, maybe, but maybe not. It doesn't matter. Okay, so. Yeah, just being stressed because I wanted to control things so much. I wanted a resolution so quickly. I didn't feel like I let people breathe in when we were fighting or arguing or whatever, or not having a good time together with like partners because they're so close to me, that like that affected me so much. Again, being very codependent and stuff. So yeah, that was something too. I was also in my early 20s. Like, I guess it started when I was 18. I started to get arrested for doing graffiti and stuff. So, because it happened more than once, and I was like out doing that. I think that was actually a way for me to cope with anxiety too, of just like, again, being out either alone or being with someone and taking long walks and doing something. And the reasons I started doing graffiti were very different at the start from the end, and they changed and shifted and evolved. So that's, again, another topic for another day. But that was something that I think helped me manage my stress in a way. But at the same time, getting arrested and running away from cops and all that other stuff isn't really a peaceful or calming like thing. So having legal troubles, having financial troubles, being in university, the way that I handled relationships, those were all things that were like happening in like my late teens and early 20s that were just like not helping me mentally and emotionally at all. And then, like I said, I at some point around, I don't know what year, maybe 2008 or 9-ish, like I don't know. Like I'd begun to shift and not like this whole codependent thing and being like that, recognizing that thing in myself that I didn't like, and I'm like, that's not cool, let's not be that person. And just feeling pathetic, I guess, is part of it. Like that word is a really appropriate word of how I would feel at the time and really not like. So I started to kind of shift in that nature too and become better with relationships in that regard anyway. So that helped. But I just like continued on being in university, always kind of being in like a state of financial flux and difficulty, being on student loans and living on my own and whatever else, right? And like, yeah, just, yeah. And again, not being the person I want to be, which is this whole very internal thing of this struggle. Like, I haven't been who I wanted to be for so long. I'm not there yet. Maybe like, I think that if you're doing it right, like life, you're probably never who you want to be 100% of the time or for long before you kind of like, I think I want to be a little in the work, like you want to do self-work, right? Self-improvement all the time. But I'm very much still not where I want to be with myself, because partly the way that I treat others, partly the way I treat myself. And that was definitely more concentrated there in my mid-20s and late 20s, where I was not treating myself or others the way that I want to be treated, that I wanted to be. So that was definitely adding to things. But then this is just this fluctuation of things I was doing, because I was never consciously battling anxiety and trying to make, like, I was never consciously working on my anxiety. But then in my mid-20s, I got into, there was a band here and a band there, and like some lasted longer than others, but again, I had never stopped like walking and like doing whatever and screaming and doing vocals, and I was like, no, I really want to be in a band. Like, I'd wanted that since high school, but didn't really know why. It was just this thing that I felt, and I was like, yeah, I need to be doing that. So that art, as well as like my writing, had really waned after high school a lot. Probably less teen angst and less time and less factors, I guess. And generally, I was happier than I was in high school too. But then there was like internal struggles and stuff, right? So yeah, I felt like high school was more outside things that were affecting me and me trying to deal with them. And then after high school, there was less outside factors because I was like on my own, free for the most part, other than constraints of societal structures and finances and school. But I mean, my home life was my home life now, so that was much better. Anyway, but my writing kind of went down, and that was one thing that helped me cope, I think. My walking and stuff stayed the same, or was more so. So I lost basketball as well, so that I wasn't as physically active at all. I think that part of me not being happy with myself also was like my physique and my health. So yeah, the less active I was and like the unhealthier that I got, that kind of adds to things, which creates a cycle of stuff. But anyway, so where was I? Yeah, writing went down, physical activity went way down, walking kind of went up, vocals and stuff probably went up a little bit. And then when I started doing graffiti, like we could say the visual art started, or the expressiveness and creative like started in that way, was the writing went down. This is a new type of writing. Anyway, and then I got into bands, and I was like, hey, this is like the best. It's super creative, and like I'm screaming like once or twice a week, like in a band setting, and then on my own, like once or twice more outside of that to like keep up practice, vocal practice. Also, like jams were very physical for me, just like having rehearsal or whatever with the band and just jamming was very physical for me almost all the time. And releasing these chemicals that I really needed. Also, I was writing again in a way that was new, and just trying to craft a song in a certain way and write about that. Write about that in a different way and express it in a different way. And like I said, it was really creative, it was expressive, it was physical, it was like really, really good for me. And then, like after I stopped doing graffiti, after the last arrest, I mean, that was the kind of the start of university for me, just coincidentally. So then I was doing visual art at the time too. So, and both of those things are something that I'll talk about in another video. Music, writing, and visual art all together. But I was doing all these things creatively, physically. They were managing my mental health much better, because there was so much coping going on that I didn't even recognize as coping sometimes. I think with the band, I was like, man, there were times where I was like, frick, I'm in a horrible place. I wish I could just be jamming right now. And I know I've said that to probably every band I've been in, is like, man, I wish I had a button that was like, hey, I could just teleport and we could all just jam, like right now. I need it right now. Because that was a coping mechanism I knew that I had in my back pocket, but it was always a scheduled one, right? Where it was like, oh, if no one can make it this week, something happened, and then, or like our drummer isn't there, and like, that's not fun. And then so that's also, I think, which I don't know if any band people have been in bands if they're going to watch this, but like that's something that, whether I explained it or not at the time, well, I'd get so upset when things got canceled and it affected my playing time, like my time to jam together, because yes, I can go walk and rehearse. Part of it was like, oh, we need to like keep up the quality and we need to get better and improve and be productive. That was part of it. So I didn't want to miss practices and jams for silly reasons. But also part of it was like, you're taking this, the way that I was seeing is, you are taking this away from me. This is my coping mechanism. This is what I need, and you're not letting me have it, and you're affecting my mental health. I wasn't thinking of it exactly that way, but I was thinking of it as like, this person is taking this away from me because they're not treating it as seriously as I am, because of whatever, they're taking this away from me, and I need that thing, and thus why I was also sometimes the way I was in bands, which again wasn't in that time. I was not managing. It's funny to use the word managing, but like I just wasn't managing myself the way I wanted to, or my interactions with others a lot of the time. And that since I've recognized that, obviously I can help improve that. I've been trying to. And now that I'm not in bands, like it matters as much with that context. But I said managing was funny just because it was also like the role that I was playing in those bands I was in. Like every band I was in was a managerial role too, partially probably because I wanted it, because I wanted to be in control, which we'll get to with my anxiety. But that was also like another stressor also at the same time, because it was like, hey, everybody, I need you to get back to me ASAP. Are we playing this show? Are we recording on this date? When are you available? When are you available? And always having to deal with like 4 other dudes. And then the venue or the person recording us, like the engineer or whatever was happening, just scheduling all that stuff, or like making the artwork and sending it off and be like, hey, I want to get this done. Whatever, like I perpetuated my own anxiety a bit too. Instead of being like trying to chill out a bit, it's just a weird balance, because like I think that my mom perpetuates her own anxiety a lot. I've recognized that in her. I know that I do it too. We just do it in very different ways, and I'm trying not to do it anymore, right? But that was a way too where I was like, hey, I don't need this thing this week. I don't need it done by this week. I want it done like today. Like I finished my part. Now I'm just waiting on people to respond. They've got other priorities, but for me, I made things like art or the bands I was in my priority. I was still doing decent in the school. Like after, like I said, the first year or two were rocky because of relationship I was in that went like south real bad, and like the way that it affected me and the way that I let it affect me and how I coped with it. I really had some trouble with school and keeping up, and had some late withdrawals and failed a couple classes and stuff. But anyway, the bands were like such a priority for me because they were a creative outlet. I was just like excited about it. It was fun. It was artistic, creative. It helped me manage and cope with my stress and anxiety. Even though I wasn't labeling myself with anxiety at that point, it helped me cope with that. So it was a priority for me, and one of the people, it wasn't as much of a priority for them because it didn't need to be. It just, I didn't take it the right way at all. So, lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, just like even the art direction and stuff, whatever, just having to wait for people caused me to be anxious, but I was doing so much that I always had to be waiting for people. When I was like, emailing, phoning, like I said, communicating with venues, communicating with the other 4 people I was in a band with, having to get back, these 4 people to get back so I can get back to that person, they have to get back to me, and then I have to get back to these people, and it was like this all the time. And I was like, yes, it can wait. Like that's the thing with me, is that even still now I struggle with that a lot. Like, can it wait? Will I let it wait? Like, I like to just get things done ASAP. So it's like when I get an email, I want to respond right away. Partially because I don't want to forget and whatever else. And I also know that like some things are time sensitive, and we never know how that could affect the other person and what they're doing and their plans and whatever, right? Because I know how that's made me feel. So if I can get something done right away, I would like to get it done right away. And I'd like people to be the same, but that's not how it works. So part of me is still struggling with this thing of like, do I need that response back from someone right away? Can I just chill? Can I just wait? And so many times there, like I found people way too easygoing, and I also, I associated that with either like laziness or not caring or whatever. I'm like, you're way too chill about this. And because again, my need at the time was like, one, I'm excited about it, it's fun, it's creative, it's whatever, it's art, which is different than the creative part and fun part, kind of. It was serious to me, and it was helping me cope with my emotional and mental health. So there's this thing happening. So sometimes someone was up here on the same level with me. Usually there was one person at least in a band who was on the same level with me, not for the same reasons, but I mean that they treated it very seriously. But usually it's because I think they were more artistic and they were serious about their craft more so, and other people might have been like, yeah, this is fun, and they would still practice here and there, but they had other priorities, and I just like, that's just what happens, like sometimes in a smaller city too, you have to be a smaller city, like, yeah, anyway, more willing to just be with that group of people, I guess. You don't, and I wasn't thinking at the time like that oh no, I need to move on to the next thing, like, I generally, I gelled like on a humor level, and was comfortable with the dudes I was in a band with for the most part. There were a couple that I was like, I don't know about this, but there were like 3 in particular, like Echo Serenity and Destrier and Why can't I remember? Upon Wings of Shadow. Anyway, those three major ones, there was a couple little projects in between. But with those, I always felt like there was one person at least that was kind of on the same level with dedication, at least, and for different reasons than me. Dedication in the way that I'm interpreting it or labeling it or whatever, right? Defining it, I guess. There's dedicated for different reasons or dedicated on a different level or in a different way. So anyway, but yeah, you never know. It's just dealing with people and like what you kind of get and how you gel and whatever. And there's not like a plethora of people to carve out this perfect, like, I'm looking for serious people and this thing, blah, 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 only. And I was just excited to play, and they were good players too. Like, for the most part, everyone in those three bands that I worked with were good, were great. And like some people, there was change in members, which is why I'm saying almost everyone. There were changing members with two of those bands anyway. So, segue for whatever dumb reason. So, so I was doing these creative things at the time, doing a lot of art because of my fine arts degree and my personal practice with that. And I was also, it was a very physical thing. The band was all those things: creative, artistic, expressive, physical. So that was all there. And then, at the time that I was finishing my ed degree, so let's say it was around so in 2014, I think is when Jordan, which I hope he doesn't mind me saying his name, but anyway, so that was the time I think Jordan had left the band to move to Drumheller. Was the end of 2014, I think. I could look up the dates, but so I finished my ed degree in 2015 in like the spring. So it was towards that time he left to go to Drumheller. We needed to find a new guitarist. We already had some trouble with our bassist who we let go. And we're like, hey, whatever, like a 4-piece, let's just do that then. And we played once as a 4-piece without a bassist out of necessity. But we're like, we just wanted to keep this going, and I was like so stressed about letting it go. I was like, I don't want to like let this thing like go. And like I wasn't done with the project or the band, right? I still needed it, I still wanted it, I wanted to keep doing things with it. Anyway, Jordan left, we got a different Jordan to replace that Jordan. And but it was just, we were just kind of figuring things out again. No bassist, we've got a new Jordan, and what are we doing, and where can we go next, and how do we get there? And just kind of figuring out how we worked with somebody new. And it was like, at that point, I'm getting into the history of the band, unimportant. So anyway, then after that, our drummer was like, my priorities have changed and whatever. And then I was like really cheesed about that. And just super choked about it, and I was like, frick, like now the band's done. So this was like, again, because the way that I was processing it was like, this thing got taken away from me, and not really thinking like, yeah, people have priorities, that's fine, like that's the thing. And it wasn't a thing about him not wanting to like, whatever, there was other reasons with past people that like, weren't having fun anymore because they didn't want to put in the work or whatever. That wasn't the thing that was happening here. It was just legitimate, different priorities, not as much time being able to invest, and it was probably a good thing for our sake that at that point he was able to say that, rather than trying to like drag things on and it not being good, and then me not, either way, whatever, it needed to happen. So, so that was not great for me, and I took that really hard, and then I didn't have this, and then I didn't have this other outlet because I didn't have people to go create music with and do live shows with, and like, I could write, and I could go out and scream stuff or whatever, but it's not the same thing at all. It's really not. So, especially at that time, I was also like, finishing my ed degree, shortly after that happened, I think, or right around the time that happened, maybe, like, I started dating a pretty significant partner in my life, and then her and I like moved in together, and it was like pretty quick. Anyway, so like I had lost this coping mechanism I was using. I didn't know that was like so important to me at the time. I mean, it was, but I didn't know really how much it affected things. Whatever. I was finishing my degree, working hard on that, Lost this thing that helped me cope. Was in this new relationship, which at first was really great, but then moving in and stuff, there's all this stress and like trying to figure things out and getting to know each other, and like should have gotten to know each other more before that, right? But just figuring things out and just whatever. There's all this other stuff going on. I was looking for work. I ended up like, which was in another video about like how I ended up moving to Lethbridge in the first place because of school and needing to find work and or being done school. I was working at Maple Leaf. That was a very stressful job too. So I wasn't getting sleep in the way that I should be getting. It was a dangerous environment. There were things that pissed me off every day. People, situations, whatever. It was a lot of stuff that would incite anxiety for me. And then I didn't have the same means to cope with it. Like I was still making art, but not even in the. I didn't have access to the studios anymore either. After I graduated, I didn't have any studio space. So I had the garage, but that like when we moved into this place, I had the garage and I could make work in there in summer, but not in winter. It wasn't heated or insulated properly, so there was I couldn't do that. So inside the house, I would kind of tried one or two little things, but it's really difficult and very messy. And yeah, so it wasn't really creating art. I wasn't writing. I wasn't playing live. I wasn't doing anything physical, and it just got to be like that. And my relationship wasn't going super well. I wasn't the person I wanted to be for myself or in that relationship, and I was causing a lot of problems too for my own mental and emotional well-being. So then like that thing just like after that there was a way bigger shift. So yeah, after that there was just a way bigger shift in the coping mechanisms available to me, also the ones that I was choosing to use or not use because I wasn't aware of how much I needed to really consciously focus my efforts on alleviating my anxiety from day to day, having much more of it, and having less ways that I knew of to cope. So then we get to this place of moving to Lethbridge, talking to this counselor, and also kind of realizing, also with the partner I had at the time, like in some conversations with them, realizing like how my anxiety affects me and obviously others around me. So how my anxiety kind of manifests a lot of the time, or in some ways, and what I attribute certain behaviors to my anxiety. I have a lot less patience. I don't know how to explain how you feel anxious. Like, you feel stressed. You feel like these are just synonyms, right? Feel like, at least for me, everyone has different forms of anxiety. Like, some people have like anxiety attacks where they feel like they can't breathe and they like maybe there's some disassociating going on with some people too, or just like they feel like a sense of doom. I've had very few like anxiety attacks. Like, some people just are not in control of their faculties when they have an anxiety attack either, and it's just like it's flight mode, basically for a lot of people, or frozen or fight. Some people, it's all of those things in one attack. I've had very few things that I would ever label as an anxiety attack. Really, only one like major one, and that was when I spent some time in a correctional facility, which only happened once. But the first night that I was there, I felt like I just couldn't breathe. There was this obviously loss of freedom, and I didn't know what I was getting out at that time. And I was just like, I've never been in that situation before or since, thankfully. But that was the time I was like, holy crap, like I can't breathe. I didn't do anything about it. I was in bed. It was that night, and there's like 20 other dudes in the room, and like, well, it wasn't 20, it was like 10 or 12, but in that room anyway. You're just on these bunks, and anyway, that was the only time I had something like that. But my anxiety just kind of, sometimes I just feel like I'm moving really quickly all the time because my brain sometimes works from like 10 steps ahead all the time, and I'm not in the present. So I'm always thinking of what needs to get done, so it kind of sometimes skews the relationship I have with reality, or what the reality of the situation is on, again, that need. When does it need to get done? And can I just chill in between and just let it happen? I'm always like, well, it needs to get done next week, but let's just do it now. Like, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. So a lot of the stuff is stuff I perpetuate, like I mentioned before. But yeah, so my anxiety sometimes manifests with me just being like high strung, um, which is having way less patience, which also means I'm quicker to anger. I'm like very speedy and just like feel like I've got to go to the next thing. What is the next thing? I don't even know. Like I'm not confused. It's more of just like, it's just at a heightened state of like pressure, of like feeling pressure. That's part of it. Sometimes in social situations, like that's when I want to like get out and I don't know what to do, and we'll talk about that. Of feeling like a different, feeling trapped, I guess, of like feeling trapped. Sometimes my anxiety comes in that sense of like doom, which is that's rare for me, but there are times where I'm like, man, I feel like I'm gonna die. Like I feel like I'm going to die right now, and I don't know why. This sense of impending doom, this feeling that I'm gonna just die, or yeah. And with that, sometimes I feel like I can't breathe. Like it wasn't as much as it was maybe that first night in prison. But I also understand it better now too, and that's this summer that happened a couple times. So sometimes like just intense feelings of just, or heightened states of things happening, like being physically trapped and not being able to go anywhere when you're in correctional. Anyway, so sometimes it's like being correctional, sometimes it means like being at a wedding, sometimes it's just all me and feeling like I don't even know what I want right now. Like sometimes if I feel like, and that's another thing too, like if I don't know what I want, it's rare for me to feel that way, and when I do feel that way, I feel trapped. I feel like, what am I doing? I don't even know what to do. I don't know what I want to do. That makes me anxious, and I feel like I have to figure it out right away. So that's why like that's part of my makeup with personality and character too. Is like I like to be very organized. I like to have plans and know what those plans are and know when they're happening, and then I get upset when people are late because it's interfering with the plans, because there's plans after those plans, and like it's really hard for me just to like go with the flow and be like easygoing and be in the present. Like I would like to have more scenarios or create more scenarios where what I'm doing right now is like, if I had just one activity a day, like then that'd be easier because I'm not thinking about what I have to do next, right? It's not like, well, if you're late, that means that like either I'm wasting, like it's wasting my time is another thing that ties back into everything with mortality and legacy and anxiety. So like if I feel like my time is being wasted, so let's say that I'm gonna go pick someone up and it's like, yeah, I'll be ready at 2, and I'm like, okay, I get there at 1:55, probably latest. I get there at 1:55, and then they make me wait and wait and wait and wait. And it's like, hey, well, let's just call it a half hour. Let's say I'm waiting for a half hour. Well, in that half hour, I could have been doing something else instead of waiting. Like, waiting is wasting time for me. I want to be productive. So I was probably doing something before I got there. So that thing I was doing before I got there, I could still be doing. Let's say I was making art. Let's say I was reading. Let's say I was writing or editing or whatever, right? Like, or even if I was just relaxing, that is time I could have been doing that thing longer, but I stopped doing that thing in order to go and pick up this person for whatever reason. Let's say we're just hanging out. And sometimes when someone's late, they think that you can just hang out longer. It's like, no, I said I could only hang out till 5 because I have plans at 6. Or like, on my plan maybe was to go home and I gotta do laundry and I gotta do chores and supper and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, well, it's not that easy. And for me, like I get flustered and I get upset. And sometimes they get upset too, because like, why can't you just push that stuff off till later? I'm like, no, you don't get to do that. Like, it's hard for me to let go of timelines and schedules and structures. It's like, you can't just tell me I need to do it later. Like, no, we had a plan and you didn't follow it, so who are you to say now that, oh, you can just do it later? Like, that upsets me. And sometimes they get upset because of, why can't you just chill? Like, it's fine. It's gonna be okay. We'll cut it short. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't want to cut it short. I wanted this full time with you, and I don't get it because you were late. Anyway, it just becomes a problem. So, which I'm trying to be more chill about. But everything is just so connected to everything else for me. That's why if I have like one activity a day, wouldn't be as much of a thing. But I usually have things I want to do on my own, things with other people, plans are all around this, and work and whatever. And like creating art and editing this stuff, which is arguably art, and then needing time for myself to have like more mindfulness activities. So Um, yeah, so there's these different ways that my anxiety manifests. Sometimes it's just alone, which is rare, but mostly it's brought on by social situations, whether it's a friend who makes me late, or like if I'm late, or if there's a like an uncontrollable situation outside of my or my friends or any person that I know, if it's outside of their control, it's like, oh, there was like a lightning bolt hit a tree, and then now they're clearing the bridge, and you can't go on it, and now everyone's late and backed up traffic or something like that. That can still make me anxious, even though it's no one's fault, right? So just being late contributes a lot. People who are disorganized that affect, like someone else's disorganization that affects my organized thing that I had all planned out. Changing plans, I guess, that's a thing. Sometimes when plans change, I do not handle that well at all, because again, I am thinking 10 steps ahead. I'm thinking of this changes this, and this, and this, and this. There's not much room for flexibility for me, and there needs to be more, because life doesn't work the way that I would like it to and function for my own purposes to just feel chill if everything has worked. And I know it doesn't work, but the problem is when I can contribute it not working to a source, which is like a person that I know, that's when it gets sucky, because I can be like, it's your fault, it didn't work. You could have done things differently. Why didn't you just wake up on time? Why didn't you get up earlier? Why didn't you do that thing anticipating that you might have a problem down the road? Why would you do everything the very last minute or whatever, right? So that becomes the problem where I start blaming people for things not working out, and I just need to be more loose. I know that we're all different people, and I screw up sometimes too, right? So I need to be more flexible, because I can't even keep to my own standards, and that's why I need to change my standards, not just for myself, but for other people, and if I want my interpersonal relationships to work better, or even professional relationships, I hold those up to a really high standard that can't be met, I think, a lot of the time. We're all fallible and we're all human, but like, it's really hard still for me to deal with that, because I'm always like, no, that this is a professional environment, you should be professional. That means being super organized and on time and communicating effectively. I don't like doubts and gaps in knowledge, being in limbo, not knowing what's going on. That stuff really, if I don't know something that I think I should know in order to prepare or do the thing right, then I'm just like, well, how am I supposed to do this thing right? I want to do it right. I don't want to do it poorly or whatever. So that stuff makes me anxious. And when it's a lot of like relying on other people that makes me anxious, because I'm not in control anymore. If I'm in control of a situation, I don't have much anxiety generally. Sometimes I think about like things that could happen that may never happen, right? And I like to prepare for that if I'm prepared for that thing. So let's say it's like having a spare tire in the trunk or whatever, right? It's like, if I get a flat tire, well, at least I have a spare. So I never think about getting a flat tire and not having a way home or on a highway or on a trip. Like, my car has been in good repair, like I've kept it up well, like it's maintenance regularly, that I'm not worried about that kind of stuff. But there are times like traveling where I'm like, hey, well, I like to plan out, for time, and like, we don't know what's going to happen on the road, and we want to get there at this time, so we're not driving in the night. Let's leave as early as possible, whatever. But there are times I do overanalyze situations, and I get a little anxious about things that could happen that may never happen, and maybe I can't prepare for them. That doesn't happen crazy often. But it kind of leads to why I don't really want to travel outside the country, because I'm scared to, because I'm just like, there's so many things that could happen, and I feel safer at home, like within Canada for sure. I think being away from my home too is something that makes me anxious. If I'm away for too long and I don't have like a home base, like, I think that if I were to do, like, I've thought about this many times when I talk with people, if I were to do like an artist residency somewhere, I could make that my home. Let's say it's just a month, but I would bring the things that I feel comfortable with, whatever. I don't have any pets or dependents or anything at home, so I could just make that my home for a month. That would be okay. That would be much better. I'd be able to cope with that and be on that like artistic creative adventure or vacation or whatever, and I think that would be okay. But not being able to be productive makes me anxious too, because I want to be productive. So like, if I'm visiting for like Christmas vacation or things like that makes me anxious if I'm away from home too long, because I'm like, I can't really do productive things there that I can do at home, like in Lethbridge. So, yeah, I do different productive things. As I socialize with people that I haven't seen for a while, and I connect and like have those fun times and like that stuff that I can't do here necessarily with the same people. So I do get some of that, but generally, I still want to be productive, and that's a different type of productivity. And this kind of relates to some stuff that I went through with my counselor, which I've been maybe hinting at around the edges without realizing it, not being very direct. But this thing that was really, really valuable to me, and I've talked about not being in the present that much. And so one thing that they had mentioned to me that kind of like brought my attention in of it was that I'm so task driven, and I need to be like more like present, basically, and like like value these moments more than the task of getting things done. I'm very just like task focused, and I am like focused on this, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and that's part of what contributes to my drive and wanting to be productive and do things. But I need balance. I've always thought about balance, but I've been so imbalanced in a lot of ways in my life when it comes to this. So focusing on the moment. And that's why I said, like, if I could just have one task that day, or task, if I have one activity or whatever it is that day, then it wouldn't matter as much maybe as to when it ends and when it starts, whatever. There's things like meals that tend to be markers for me with time. If I need to go home and make a meal, I need to be home. I can't extend the time with my friend as much. Part of that is like financial restriction, because like, oh, let's just go out to supper together. Like, let's just do that. Like, there's other factors that work that make it more rigid for me, more than I'd like it to be. But yeah, so trying to focus more on moments and enjoying that moment for what it is, and not being so task driven. So when I'm with friends in good company, generally I more am focused on that moment because it's fun and I enjoy it and it's good for my soul, and I don't want it to end, and I just like, that's what I'm thinking of. I don't want to thinking of it as a task and let's move on to the next thing. It's more like, oh yeah, like I don't get to hang out with friends that much and whatever, so let's hold on to that as long as possible. I'm having a great time. But yeah, those are some of the ways I guess my anxiety kind of manifests, and what drives my anxiety up, and like what, yeah. I'm trying to think of other things. I guess like I said, social situations like a wedding. That is the worst thing for me, because I can handle crowds of people. Let's say it's like, oh, you're going, like I would never go shopping on Christmas Eve or something like that. I would never do that because like I have my stuff prepared in advance, right? But that wouldn't bother me. Like being in crowds of hundreds of people, that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is when there's a lot of people I have to interact with. Forced interaction. So in university, let's say in ed, there was a lot of group work, and it was like forced group work. There were times I walked out of class. I'm like, no, not doing this, dog. Like, I'm not in grade 2, thanks. I know how to socialize to a degree, whatever. I'm not like socially awkward, I don't think, but I don't want to be in forced interaction with people. If I'm meeting somebody one-on-one, that's fine. If someone's talking to me one-on-one, unless I know I don't like them, then that's okay too. But I won't initiate that. I'm really bad at networking, horrible at networking because of that. I don't want to go out and shake hands and be like, oh, hey, how about you? Like, I don't want to do that. It's draining for me. So going to weddings is like the example that's right there on the tip of my brain. You're forced to meet all these people that are important to the person you're with usually. And I don't want to meet them, and I don't want to be there. I don't care. Like, that's a whole other part of me that just like, I don't care. Like, who are they? Like, if they're super, super important to you, I probably would have met them before this wedding. Like, if it's your immediate family or whatever, it depends on who it is. I'm thinking of my partner at the time that I went to a lot of weddings. But I don't like forced interaction with people, and especially on a scale of like, oh, here's my cousin Bob, and here's whatever. This is, like, I don't want to do that. Also, just weddings, there's a lot of stuff I just don't like. So that's the thing too, is I have a hard time doing things I don't want to do, right? Like some people are like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I'll just do it. Things like that are very, very draining and mentally and emotionally taxing for me. And for some people, being in those situations, they thrive in because they're very outgoing and more extroverted, and I'm very much more introverted. I love being social with my friends and people I want to be social with.
So yeah, that's a thing. And when I'm in those scenarios, I'm like, that's when I'm like, what do I do? So I guess that's what I wanted to talk about a bit too, is like things that I've been told, like, oh, you could do this to help you cope on a daily. So what can I do in that moment? Like that's a whole other thing. I still don't even know what to do. Like use a fidget toy or something. Like distract myself, take a break. It's really hard when I'm in the scenario like that. That makes me so anxious and I don't know what to do. And then I start to get angry because I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want to leave. Whatever. And usually the person I'm with isn't as compromising, or they really need that scenario and I don't need it, and I just need to find a compromise. I can't be in that scenario for very long because I don't want to be there at all. So being there for 5 hours is just, yeah, can't handle that. But things that again, like, so there's coping mechanisms in those moments that I need to be able to find out. Those are the things that I'm scared of. Like, what do I do in that moment? I need to get out of that. Okay, so speaking of being anxious and getting angry, my GoPro's doing me a bad right now, and I need to figure out my battery situation. I have a battery pack and I was using it, but it seems like the power it takes to record video is at a higher, how do I word this? It's like it's draining the battery faster than the battery is giving it power. So like, yeah, the battery pack just isn't useful. Like, it's supposed to add on like 3 extra hours of battery time. Like my GoPro runs like an hour and 40 minutes or something, like by itself, or it should. I thought I charged it full. I don't remember using it before I got here. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So I got to finish the video like this with it like plugged in and me holding it right now and stuff. Unfortunately, I'm under a time crunch right now too. I didn't think if I didn't have all these issues, the battery's died on me like 4 times now, then I would have been done by now and fine. But anyway, yeah, so there's coping mechanisms in the moment that I don't know what they are or how to use them effectively yet, and fortunately I haven't had a situation like a wedding in a little bit, but those are things I need to learn because those are the times where my anxiety ramps up like crazy. I don't know what to do with it. Other times when I'm anxious in the moment, if I can go and take a walk or something, then sure, I can do that. If I can write, if I can go and make art, if I can do something physical. So like yeah, times where I'm not in control or things affect me that I don't have control over that maybe make me sad or make me anxious or make me angry, sometimes make me anxious because I'm like, what do I do with this? I don't know how to deal with this emotion or something sometimes, or this scenario that I've been handed. So sometimes I need to go and like, it depends on where I'm at. Like if I'm sometimes like it's so hit and miss. Sometimes I can deal with something at that moment, like or I don't have to deal with it at all. Like I'm just like, hey, I'll have to save that for later. And other times I'm like, I'm in the middle of this thing that I have to do with people or something, and doesn't work and it does not compute. But there are things that I can do that I need to be better at doing on like a daily or weekly basis that can help my anxiety levels, my stress levels just like come down and be more level all the time. So things like biking, being physically active, that improves my mood immediately. So if I work out in the morning, if I work out in the morning, I feel just set for the whole day. Like I really do. Like I am way more patient. I am not stressed as much at all. Like it is an amazing difference. So there are things that I can do on a daily, weekly basis, some mindfulness things that can help me just lower my stress in general. So if I take time to, basically states of meditation, what was I talking about? Okay, exercise. If I exercise in the morning, that has like a profound effect on my day. Like I said, I'm generally way more patient, just way more chill. I can deal with things as they come much better rather than getting upset that things aren't going the way they should be or as planned, or people are putting pressure on me when they could have been more organized themselves or whatever. I just have way more patience and feel better and happier. Like I just feel happier. That is very consistent if I work out in the morning. The problem is I just don't. I need to make time to do that, which also means I need to get to bed on time, which is a struggle. So Yeah, so that's one thing that I could do on a daily slash whatever on a regular routine basis. So it would help me just not get to states of anxiety if I'm more balanced because I'm working out in the mornings. Then that would help me a lot. Biking, different from what I would call a workout, even though it's a very physical activity. When I do some trails and go on like 20K rides and stuff and whatever, like yes, like that is a physical activity for me for sure, but it gets me outside, which is beneficial for me, and it's so much fun. Also, I get to be alone, so alone in my thoughts, sometimes listening to music depending on where I am. I don't listen to music on trails anymore, so I just get to be just alone in my thoughts, just dealing with what's in front of me a lot of the time, and just like hyper focusing on that. Because a lot of the times my brain likes to multitask or pretend it's multitasking, and I want to do all these different things, and I'm always thinking about something else, which is why painting in itself as an activity is very good for me too, usually because I'm working on a task, I'm very involved and focused on that one task. So biking is a lot of things. Biking is the best thing for me in managing my anxiety. It's hella fun. Like working out isn't fun. In the morning for me, doing that's not fun. Biking is super fun. I'm focused on one thing. It's meditative sometimes. Like there's so many different elements to biking certain trails. Like it can be really chill, then it's hard work, then it's like super beautiful and scenic, and it's just the best. It's the best. That's something that I want to do anyway, right? So it's not hard to do that, weather permitting. Reading is something that that's more of a meditative thing in a way. Like I used to, like I read for pleasure, like, but when I started university, I stopped reading so much, and I need to get back on that and make time to read. And that's something I would like to do at the beginning of my day and at the end of my day, but especially the end of my day, just to like calm down, just like get to bed and chill and read, put my phone away, not watching videos or doing this or doing that. But that is a way for me to like chill and meditate to and be focused on one thing. However, my attention span has gotten so poor because of the activities of like social media that I've engaged in and the way I've treated it that I know I've affected my own attention span with that. So I need to get back on that. Some things like coloring, like I've tried a couple times, like a coloring book while listening to music because you're just focused on that one thing and just chilling. That is, I think, why there's been a rise in adult coloring books, and they've promoted like, oh, great for stress relief, and it can be for sure. I just again need to get into a routine and get into a rhythm. Listening to music and doing nothing else. This is why I have the record player. It is something that can help me, but again, it's very difficult for me to just chill still. Like the coloring book is more accessible because I'm working with my hands and doing something and focusing while I listen to music and trying not to be distracted with my phone or something else. However, if I'm just laying on the couch listening to music and I fall asleep, like maybe that's what I needed. My body needed sleep, I guess, so that's okay. But it's so hard. I don't listen to music and consume it in the way that I did when I was in high school. And I think I mentioned that in my Power of Music video a bit. It's just a very different function for me now, and I want to try and use that as a more mindfulness activity too, and really just lose myself in the music in this way I used to, and make it a priority. But time, right? Like if I could choose going for a bike ride over music, I will go for a bike ride. When bike rides don't permit, whatever. Other things too, there's tons of different ways people de-stress. Video games, whatever. Sometimes I play some of those, but not very often, not for very long. Anyway, yeah, so there's, again, things you can do in your weekly routine or daily routine, or things you can do to lower your anxiety levels in general and help you manage them more so you don't get to the places where in the moment, oh crap, like I am so anxious right now, I don't know what to do with myself. How do I deal with this moment? I just need to walk out. I need to go for a walk. But then there's stress and anxiety around that if you like care what people think and stuff like that about you managing your anxiety in that moment. So like the key for me is to try not to get there. Some situations I just know I'm going to get there. If it's like a wedding, well then I need to do mindfulness activities and prepare for that the best way I can before I get there. Again, part of that preparing is like being on time, being organized, which when I've gone to weddings with people, that's not happening either. That adds to the anxieties. So I'm still working with it a lot. But yeah, there's things that I need to get back on with routinely doing, and part of it is going to bed early. Getting enough sleep is also just like, not just for managing anxiety in the way that we're talking about anxiety, but managing stress, being like just a balanced person and human, like get enough sleep. Like that's so important for your health. I need to get enough sleep, go to bed on time, wake up, and just like start the day right. And sometimes that's a workout for me. Maybe it'll be reading instead. Maybe it's having tea and something else. But you don't want to wake up in a panic either, right? Like, don't wake up late. Therefore, don't go to bed late. And don't wake up super groggy if you can help it. Some people have trouble sleeping. They can't do anything about it. Fortunately, I generally don't have trouble sleeping. I have trouble getting to bed. And it's not because my thoughts are keeping me up and stuff. It's just because I want to be up, because I want to keep doing stuff, or I wasn't productive enough, or a lot of reasons I don't get to bed on time. So, yeah, like this video went way off the rails a bunch because the battery kept dying and dying and dying. But those are kind of my thoughts right now on how I'm dealing with anxiety, how I've come to recognize my anxiety, ways that I have coped in the past and realized why my anxiety has been so much higher. And again, but since the past couple of years of really realizing that I have this anxiety, I have more weapons to use to become more balanced. Weapon's such an aggressive word, but I mean, like, I feel like I'm battling the anxiety, right? So, like, I have more tools, I guess you want to use that word, to help me with being a more balanced individual. Because my anxiety and the way that it manifests, the way that it expresses itself, I don't like it. It doesn't just affect me, it affects the people around me, affects my relationships with people on a personal and sometimes professional level too, though generally I think it's way more on a personal level. The closer you are to me, the more comfortable I am being me, and being me sometimes means just being aggressive and stuff, and that's not good. So I noticed that my anxiety definitely affects my relationships to such a degree, and whatever. It's been a journey. Like I mentioned, being in Lethbridge, since then I have felt like I've grown so much more in the past 2 years than I have in like 20 or something. Like, which maybe not 20, but I have felt so much. I've learned so much about myself in the ways that I need to grow. I have not grown as much as even I've wanted to, but I'm way more aware of the direction I need to go and aware of how I can get there. So there's no excuse. I just need to do it, right? And for me, like, anxiety is just, fortunately and unfortunately, a part of my identity, and recognizing that, giving it a label has helped me. I'm not on any medication or anything like that. I think I can balance things fairly well just by doing some things, having certain routines, trying to think about the importance of things and priorities, and being more in the moment, not thinking 10 steps ahead if I don't have to, like, not being so task-oriented, being more experience and moment-oriented. That ties back to the whole legacy thing too. But yeah, yeah, those are my thoughts on my anxiety, I guess, right now. Like, it's hard to wrap it up because I feel like I'm just so actively, it's why it's always hard for me to wrap up something like this, because I'm still thinking about it. I'm like, what else am I learning about myself right now? Where else can I go with this? What else is there to say? I don't want to leave anything out. But that's where I'm at with it right now. I'm sure there'll be another video on talking about anxiety and stuff eventually, but those are some things that I use. That's how my anxiety manifests a bit. That's the history of it. That's where I'm at in the present, and some coping mechanisms that I use and things I need to work on. With that, I will see you on another time.